JMC presents Studio Talk second series, number 9, and still on the 10th of January 2021. And I just finished putting the last video into the computer and heard it through, and I thought I should at least show what I wanted to show, that I had to do a talk on at the finissage of my Weltformel exhibition at Kunsthalt. That was in June of last year. A very brave thing to do under the circumstances. And so when under the pressure of having to say something, I start thinking in overdrive or whatever it's called, and then it looks like this, and these are the notes for the lecture. And of course, when I'm talking, there's no way I can read this stuff. You know, it looks nice, but it's absolutely incomprehensible. But this is what it looks like in the brain. This is really closer than a book with print, with the words neatly lined up in rows and so on. And I do not pretend to be a philosopher. I am just a person who was challenged in a certain way by this Rembrandt painting, Philosopher in Meditation, with which I identified. And to be perfectly honest, I tried taking philosophy courses in college at Swarthmore, but I did not understand a thing, because they were into logic and analytical philosophy of language, although and I just did not understand. And this is I still don't understand. Although I plunged into Wittgenstein about 2 years ago, and even wrote a long journal in my Fausten Diary series about quickening Wittgenstein. So I read a lot about his life, about his ideas, and the important thing that came across just here, I'm saying on the side, with Wittgenstein is this statement that everybody knows, that whereof we cannot speak, we should hold our peace or be silent or not say anything. And this is a very, very, very wise, a very important moment in philosophy, because it says there's something, your questions you're just never going to be able to solve, because even asking them is already the problem. The formulation is wrong, they or just cannot be resolved, or it's meaningless, or all these things. So so I got challenged by this painting because it's called Philosopher in Meditation, and I resonated with it, and soon found out it wasn't a philosopher, but a blind man, Tobit, from the Bible, the Old Testament. And this was, of course, a big help too, because as you will see in Ozone Station, where talk about blindness on the level of the mind is like, for example, using your consciousness the whole time, but you don't realize that you're doing that. You have to put attention on your attention, bring attention to consciousness, and then oh yes, I'm conscious, but the rest of the time you're just busy with whatever happens to be the content of your consciousness, whether a thought, feeling, sensation, whatever it is, music, internet, your smartphone, all these things that take attention. And in a sense, one could say that the terminology about consciousness is part of the problem, because you know, what it's basically about is about attention, but that word just does not you know, attention, yes, which assumes that you're awake and therefore aware, and so on and so forth. So the one word that I left out of my previous videos just now on the Weltformel was language, that this is the biggest problem. And of course it's also a means to explore the mind and what we call reality. But we have to realize that we're going to make a mental picture. It's like an artist. He's going to be like me, an artist, conceptual, philosophical. So I'm going to be producing things like I showed you with Sein Sinn equals shine. That oh my God, I forgot the thread. Yes, remembering that these are just appearances. That means, it doesn't mean that it's not real, because what's virtual is for us as real as it gets. Our dreams, we think that they're actually what we're actually experiencing, whatever it is that's happening in the dreams. So it's not because it's dream or it's an illusion or its appearance that it isn't real and that it doesn't have effects and that it cannot be experienced. Of course it can, but it just means that there's a point at which the world starts, the world where for billions of years not a single word was ever uttered. There was no language. This world is still all around us. The whole universe is that. And here we are with our language, thinking that we are understanding the world, and just because we're naming it, just because we're telling stories about the words and about the different things that we name and describe. So it's virtual, it's an illusion, it's an appearance, but it's real as such. If you make a mistake, you made a mistake about something that's real, even though you took it for something else, whatever. So basically, I'm not a philosopher, I'm just a person who's using his mind to understand the mind, because this is what I'm working with. This is my medium for thinking and trying to understand. The mind is the medium in this case. So I'm not, and I was doing this, let's say, on an not on the basis that I wanted to produce ideas or concepts, but just for myself. Starting at a certain point, 15 years into the Rembrandt research, I wanted to become an artist, or I wanted to seriously commit myself to being an artist. And right after that, within a year, came Ozone Station, and this was basically an updating of the Rembrandt painting into a contemporary idiom, except that I was going into the philosophy as well as into the blindness, because, as I said, we are blind to our consciousness to a certain extent. We're just into the contents, and consciousness, again, that can be also called a medium, a virtual medium. Why not? But we're oblivious to that most of the time. So this is the blindness that's built in, and therefore I was very fortunate to run into this Rembrandt painting, and that on the one hand it was said to be about philosophy, and on the other hand it was intended to be about blindness and about waiting. So these are things that do not have that much to do with meditation, which sounds like a very noble exercise and practice, but it has to be, this is part of what life is about. These empty spaces where, when we're waiting, when we cannot act, when we cannot think, when we cannot understand, all this is there. You can call it blindness, you can call it a hole, you can call it nothingness. This is also built in. It's the space in which things happen as well. And sometimes there's more of that than of anything else. So this is in the Rembrandt painting, there's not a whole lot going on in it. There's just this waiting, this looking, and this silence. I'll check the camera. So we got about another 2 minutes. Unfortunately, the sun is gone. Yes, as I said, the language is the big, was the word I forgot to pronounce in the last two videos, that we live in a world that's hugely, massively determined by language, and that's why it's good to work, to live with another language. And I've lived with English in the States, French in France, and now German in Germany, where I've been for this year it'll be 30 years. So when you've got several languages at your disposal, then you can think basically better, because you can always switch, because different languages offer different concepts, words. One example recently is the word pattern. There isn't that word with all the different meanings you could have in English, in French or in German. And just think of a language that does not have the word pattern in it, with the, you have patterns of behavior, patterns in terms of textiles, patterns in terms of mathematical regularities. So pattern is basically form, but meaningful form, regular form. But you've got one word in English, and in French you have to use a word for one particular meaning of pattern, and another word for another meaning, and in German the same thing. So language is very, very, very important. It's the key to what? Philosophy has to reflect on language. This has practical implications. Because when you're silent, you are.